the keeper of echoes. The air in Grandmother Alara's house was a tapestry woven from the scents of dried lavender, aging paper, and a faint, almost metallic tang of secrets. For 17-year-old Maya, it was the smell of summer, of obligatory visits that felt more like a pilgrimage to a forgotten shrine. This year, however, a new thread had been added to the familiar scent, the cloying sweetness of decay, a smell that seemed to emanate not from the old house itself, but from the very stories it held. Alara was not a typical grandmother. She wasn't one for baking cookies or knitting scarves. Her hands, though gnarled with age, were stained with the dark ink of a cartographer, a profession she had retired from but never truly abandoned. Her mind, once a razor-sharp tool that charted coastlines and delineated borders, now flickered like a dying candle, her memories a jumbled atlas of half-forgotten places and people. It was this flickering that had brought Maya to her doorstep for what felt like the 100th time. "She's having episodes," Maya's mother had explained, her voice a strained whisper over the phone. "Forgetting things. Important things." But Maya knew it was more than just forgetting. It was a deliberate rewriting of history, a careful curation of the past. Alara, the master mapmaker, was redrawing the boundaries of her own life, and Maya, an aspiring journalist with a nose for untold stories, was determined to uncover the original map. The key was the beginning, not a metaphorical key to understanding, but a real, tangible object. It was an ornate, skeleton key of tarnished brass, its head fashioned into the shape of a stylized raven. Maya found it not in a dusty attic or a locked box, but nestled in the hollow of a gnarled oak tree at the edge of Alara's overgrown garden, a place she had been inexplicably drawn to since childhood. The key felt heavy in her palm, a weight of unspoken words and locked doors. That evening, as a tempestuous summer storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil in Maya's own mind, she presented the key to her grandmother. Alara, who had been lost in a reverie, her gaze fixed on the rain-streaked windowpane, turned her head slowly, her faded blue eyes focusing on the object in Maya's hand. A flicker of something unreadable, fear, recognition, perhaps even a sliver of anger, crossed her face before being swiftly replaced by a placid mask of confusion. "Where did you get this, child?" she asked, her voice a reedy whisper. "I found it," Maya replied, her journalistic instincts kicking in. "In the old oak. Does it unlock something?" Alara's hand trembled as she reached for the key. Her fingers, a cartographer's tools accustomed to precision, fumbled with the cold metal. "Some doors are best left unopened," she murmured, her voice laced with a sudden, chilling finality. The grandmother's words, meant to be a deterrent, were a clarion call to the young journalist. The key, the raven, the cryptic warning. It was a puzzle, a story begging to be told. Maya's summer of obligation had transformed into an investigation. Her first line of inquiry was the raven. She spent hours in the local library, poring over books on mythology and folklore. The raven, she discovered, was a creature of duality, a symbol of prophecy and insight, but also a harbinger of lost souls and dark secrets. It was a fitting emblem for a family as shrouded in mystery as her own. Her research then led her to the local historical society, a dusty repository of the town's collective memory. There, buried deep within the archives, she found a name connected to her grandmother's past, a name she had never heard before: Genevieve. A faded photograph, tucked away in an old newspaper clipping about a local art exhibition, showed a young Alara, vibrant and full of life, standing beside another young woman with eyes as dark and piercing as a raven's. The caption identified her as Genevieve Dubois, a promising artist. The article spoke of Genevieve's talent, her uncanny ability to capture the soul of her subjects. But then, the trail went cold. There were no more exhibitions, no more mentions of the raven-eyed artist. It was as if she had simply vanished. Armed with this new piece of the puzzle, Maya confronted her grandmother again. This time, she didn't just show her the key. She showed her the photograph. Alara's reaction was more visceral than before. The placid mask crumbled, revealing a raw, unguarded grief that stole Maya's breath. A single tear traced a path through the wrinkles on her cheek, a river carving a canyon of sorrow. "Genevieve," she whispered, the name a ghost on her lips. And then, the stories began to spill out, not in a coherent narrative, but in fragmented memories, like shards of a shattered mirror. Alara spoke of a friendship that was more than a friendship, a bond forged in the crucible of shared dreams and artistic passion. They were two sides of the same coin, Alara the pragmatist who mapped the world, and Genevieve the dreamer who painted its soul. But there was a darkness that clung to Genevieve, a shadow that even her vibrant art could not dispel. Alara spoke of a sadness, of fragility, but her words were vague, her narrative unreliable. She would start a sentence only to let it drift away, leaving Maya with more questions than answers. The climax of their fractured storytelling came one sweltering afternoon, when the air was thick with the promise of another storm. They were in Alara's studio, a room filled with maps that charted the known world. Yet the most important map of all, the map of her own past, remained uncharted territory. "She was my compass," Alara said, her voice barely audible above the rising wind. "And I lost her." She then confessed the purpose of the Raven Key. It did not unlock a door, but a box. A small, intricately carved wooden box that had been hidden in a secret compartment behind a loose floorboard in the studio. A box that held the last vestiges of Genevieve. With trembling hands, Alara retrieved the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were not letters or diaries, but a series of exquisite miniature paintings. They were portraits of Alara, each one capturing a different facet of her being: the determined cartographer, the wide-eyed dreamer, the loyal friend. But the last portrait was different. It was unfinished, the colors muted, the lines blurred. And in Alara's eyes, there was a look of profound, heart-wrenching despair. "She was supposed to finish it," Alara whispered, her voice breaking. The day she disappeared." The truth, when it finally emerged, was a torrent that threatened to drown them both. Genevieve had not simply vanished. She had taken her own life. The sadness Alara had spoken of was a deep, unyielding depression, a storm that had finally consumed her. And here, the story twisted into its most painful revelation. Alara, in her grief and guilt, had made a choice. She had erased Genevieve from her life, from her memories, from the family history. She had redrawn the map of her past, creating a world where her beloved friend had never existed. The forgotten name, the cold trail in the archives. It was all Alara's doing, a desperate attempt to outrun a pain that had no borders. The unreliable narrator was not just a product of a failing memory, but a deliberate act of self-preservation. She had told Maya half-truths and riddles not to be cruel, but because the full truth was a burden she had carried alone for decades. In the aftermath of the revelation, the air in the old house seemed to shift. The cloying sweetness of decay was replaced by the clean, sharp scent of rain-washed earth. The storm had broken, both outside and within the walls of the house. There was no easy resolution, no magical healing of old wounds. The grief for Genevieve was a ghost that would forever haunt the peripheries of their lives. But something had changed between Maya and Alara. The obligatory summer visits had given way to a genuine connection, a bond forged not in shared blood, but in shared secrets. Maya, the aspiring journalist, had found her story, but she also understood that some stories are not meant for headlines. They are meant to be held, to be honored, to be passed down not as a record of facts, but as a testament to the enduring power of love and the heartbreaking complexities of the human heart. The keeper of echoes had finally shared her burden, and in doing so, she had given her granddaughter a new map, not of the world, but of the intricate, often painful, but ultimately beautiful landscape of their own family. The Raven Key no longer represented a locked door, but a legacy, a reminder that even in the darkest of storms, there is always the promise of a new dawn, a new story waiting to be written. And this time they would write it together.